Hello and thank you for joining Content on Now TV, the TV show that hosts leaders and creators from around the world trying to deeply understand their publishing journey, their story. And right now we're so delighted to have with us one of the top leaders of Brahma Kumaris, spiritual university throughout the world. We're having us in our modest, natural this time, TV studios, Sister Didi Gianti. Hello to you, Didi.
Hello and Shalom and Om Shanti.
And Om Shanti and Shalom. So needed in these days, Om Shanti and Shalom.
Very much.
So people will get to know you and have better understanding of your life. If you could share the most profound moment of your life, of your personal journey, what happened in that scene?
I had just started to learn meditation in England with Daddy Janki, who stayed as my mentor for 40 years in London, serving the world, and she passed away in 2020, age 104, and she was serving and traveling until that time. And this is when 1968, and I was curious to study the teachings of the Brahma Kumaris, because I'd been connected through my mother and grandmother, but had never given proper attention to study these ideas. And as she spoke, Daddy Janki touched something deep within me, and I decided I would start learning to meditate. And 6 weeks later, I decided this is the life I want to live, and I want to surrender. And she said, write to Brahma Baba, the founder of the Brahma Kumaris, which I did, he knew me. Next day, early in the morning, I get a telegram, come to Abu and we talk about it personally. So 2 weeks later, I'm in Mount Abu, and Baba says to come and meet him, and we have a very deep exchange, and Baba's agreed that yes, it was the right moment for me to join full time. And he said, okay, tonight I'm meeting a small group, come at that time. So I joined that group at night, a small group, and we were sitting around, and we had eyes open meditation, and that means I'm in remembrance of the divine, and the other is also, and as we exchange, we're sharing that energy that comes from the divine and reaches us both. We call this drishti, the vision of soul consciousness. And as he gave me drishti, he was giving drishti to everybody, turn by turn, and as he gave me drishti, it was as if there was a magnet that was pulling me, and it was taking me out of my body and taking me to a different dimension. And in that experience, it was as if I was meeting the divine, the supreme being of light, the being who is the absolute, the source. And after some time, I don't know how long, it was as if the voltage was reduced, and I again became aware of the physical dimension. And at that moment, he also gave me a bunch of jasmine flowers, and it was an afternoon, summer months in India, and jasmine is very strong at that time, beautiful, the fragrance is very strong. And so even today, when I smell the fragrance of jasmine, I'm transported to that scene. But it was my first experience of going beyond the physical dimension and experiencing meeting with the one I would call as the Supreme. So it had a very dramatic impact on me. And I'd already decided that this is to be my life, but of course this was not the start. And I've stayed with them ever since.
It's amazing. You've been showing Didi Gianti 2 seconds, 2 moments. The last one, the stamped one, was as part of the drishti. So for people that are not aware of with the open eye meditation, that are less luck with this spiritual journey that you had, please share with me what happened at the second before. The eyes of Baba that you met, and he passed away, went out of his body many years ago. And he was the founder of Brahma Kumaris. Please share with me the uniqueness of the person, of the personality.
Here is a person who for 33 years by then had been going on a very deep journey, and a journey of total surrender to God.
Surrender.
One in which he was able to pick up the signals that the divine wanted to share with him. And so when he first had his visions...
So you're saying that he surrendered?
He had been a very successful jeweler, a diamond merchant.
Creating business.
And he was excellent in all that he touched. His creativity and his expertise in judging jewels was very renowned throughout that area. He was serving kings of the time, the viceroy at the time, so he was known. But he had a series of visions, a vision in which he had the experience of God as a being of light, another vision in which he saw huge turmoil and transformation happening within the world, and a third vision which told him that it was possible for a human being to attain perfection. And so as a result of these visions, he went away, leaving everything to go to search for what it is that he had seen. He didn't know who to ask. His gurus didn't know about it. And through that period of solitude, in silence, he understood that yes, it was possible for the transformation of the world to happen and a better world to come about through spiritual education. And he himself began that journey of spirituality at that point. He'd been a student of religion and philosophy through his life, but this was a different journey. And through that, many things became clear. When he came back to his hometown, Hyderabad, which is today in Pakistan, at that time it was a combined India, and this was in the province of Sindh. And when he came back, he started sharing these ideas with a small group, and the group expanded. And he then understood that if you want a better world, a world of equality, justice, then it has to be through equality in the family and equal roles for men and women. And he could see that this was very far from reality, especially in the place that he was. But he was guided. And what he then did was to tell his partner that he wanted to settle everything, and whatever was his rightful share, that the partner should just decide and give it. He didn't want to get into legal agreements and discussions and debate. So that happened. And out of the people who were coming, the majority happened to be women. Even today, in any gathering, a spiritual gathering, you'll probably find that the majority are women, though there will be men who are interested who are there too.
And one of the women in that group was Daddy Janki.
She wasn't at that moment there, but she had known Brahma Baba, and then she joined a little later.
So we're going to the drishti that pulled you from your other life towards this. What happened? So people that are not part of the journey will practically understand how this energy drove you towards that motion, towards that feelings, towards your journey.
He had been practicing Raj Yoga meditation, teaching it to many others by then for many, many years. And so his practice of being detached from the body, what we would say soul consciousness, we understand the soul to be here in the center of the forehead. And so his practice of meditation was very powerful, very focused, very concentrated. And so because of his practice, his connection with the divine was also very, very clear. And so when he was sharing drishti with me, my practice was just of a few weeks, no more than that. It was as if from his eyes, the power that I was gaining, at first it seemed as if his face disappeared and everything just merged into light. And then it was as if that light was focused in a point, and it was pulling me to this place where there were no walls, just light everywhere, and very far from the physical dimension. And in that space of light, I saw the Supreme, the Divine. And so the drishti was like a trigger to raise my consciousness again to a very powerful state of the awareness of soul. And of course the mind can travel. And so the mind, the body was here, but the mind had traveled to this other dimension in which I was able to have this experience of this connection with the Divine. And of course that changed my life totally.
Because on that special moment, what did you understand?
I understood that it was a new chapter, a new life beginning for me.
That the main purpose, the main goal that you understand during this spiritual journey was?
That I had to move on my own journey to the point where I could attain perfection. A soul that was completely pure and clean with all the positive attributes. You know, the Gospel talks about being created in the image of the Divine. And so for me at that moment, that experience was that yes, this is a possibility, that I can again achieve that state which was my original state of being.
If you would reflect now to Didi Gianti of those early days, and you would have now a conversation with her, what difference would you see between you today as part of your journey and her before the journey began? What change happened in your soul, in your life, in the achievement of perfection? What would you tell her?
I would tell the young girl of that time, stay with it and just simply keep your vision focused on perfection and don't get distracted by anything else at all. And you'll save yourself a lot of time and energy. Because through the journey, what I've understood is that there have been distractions, and because of those distractions, a lot of my time was spent in sorting them out. But today I'm at the point where I can see very clearly that those distractions also taught me many things.
What was the biggest distraction that you are saying and sharing?
Attachments.
He had been a very successful jeweler, a diamond merchant.
Creating business.
And he was excellent in all that he touched. His creativity and his expertise in judging jewels was very renowned throughout that area. He was serving kings at the time, the viceroy at the time, so he was known. But he had a series of visions, a vision in which he had the experience of God as a being of light, another vision in which he saw huge turmoil and transformation happening within the world, and a third vision which told him that it was possible for a human being to attain perfection. And so as a result of these visions he went away, leaving everything to go to search for what it is that he had seen. He didn't know who to ask, his gurus didn't know about it. And through that period of solitude, in silence, he understood that yes, it was possible for the transformation of the world to happen and a better world to come about through spiritual education. And he himself began that journey of spirituality at that point. He'd been a student of religion and philosophy through his life, but this was a different journey. And through that, many things became clear. When he came back to his hometown, Hyderabad, which is today in Pakistan, at that time it was Kamaran India, and this was in the province of Sindh. And when he came back, he started sharing these ideas with a small group, and the group expanded. And he then understood that if you want a better world, a world of equality, justice, then it has to be through equality in the family and equal roles for men and women. And he could see that this was very far from reality, and especially in the place that he was. But he was guided, and what he then did was to tell his partner that he wanted to settle everything, and whatever was his rightful share, that the partner should just decide, and that he didn't want to get into legal agreements and discussions and debate. So that happened, and out of the people who were coming, the majority happened to be women. And even today, when any gathering, a spiritual gathering, you'll probably find that the majority of women, though there will be men who are interested, who are there too.
And one of the women in that group was Daddy Janki.
She wasn't at that moment there, but she had known Brahma Baba, and then she joined a little later.
So if we're going to the drishti that pulled you from your other life towards this, what happened? So people that are not part of the journey will practically understand how this energy drove you towards that motion, towards that feelings, towards your journey.
He had been practicing Raj Yoga meditation, teaching it to many others by then for many, many years. And so his practice of being detached from the body, what we would say soul consciousness, we understand soul to be here in the center of the forehead. And so his practice of meditation was very powerful, very focused, very concentrated. And so because of his practice, his connection with the divine was also very, very clear. And so when he was sharing drishti with me, my practice was just for a few weeks, no more than that. It was as if from his eyes, the power that I was gaining, at first it seemed as if his face disappeared and everything just merged into light. And then it was as if that light was focused in a point, and it was pulling me to this place where there were no walls, just light everywhere, and very far from the physical dimension. And in that space of light, I saw the supreme, the divine. And so the drishti was like a trigger to raise my consciousness again to a very powerful state of the awareness of soul, and cause the mind to travel. And so the mind, the body was here, but the mind had traveled to this other dimension in which I was able to have this experience of this connection with the divine. And of course that changed my attitude.
Because in that special moment, what did you understand?
I understood that it was a new chapter, a new life beginning for me.
That the main purpose, the main goal that you understand during this spiritual journey was?
That I had to move on my own journey to the point where I could attain perfection. A soul that was completely pure and clean, with all the positive attributes. You know, the Gospel talks about being created in the image of the divine. And so for me, at that moment, that experience was that this is a possibility, that I can again achieve that state, which was my original state of being.
If you would reflect now to Didi Gianti of those early days, if you would have now a conversation with him, What difference would you see between you today, as part of your journey, and her before the journey began? What change happened in your soul, in your life, in the achievement of perfection? What would you tell her?
I would tell the young girl of that time, stay with it and just simply keep your vision focused on perfection and don't get distracted by anything else at all. And you'll save yourself a lot of time and energy. Because through the journey, what I've understood is that there have been distractions, and because of those distractions, a lot of my time was spent in sorting them out. But today I'm at the point where I can see very clearly that those distractions also taught me many things.
What was the biggest distraction that you are saying and sharing?
Attachments to human beings.
Give me, if you could be so kind, one example, practical from your life, that many of the viewers could understand that they're feeling this kind of attachment also in their lives. One example that you can share.
Daddy Janki was an image of perfection for me, and it was in a very natural way that I was very, very attached to her. And she had warned me of this and made me understand that what I had to do was just see her as an instrument and nothing else, but human feelings coming away, and so there was a lot of dependency and attachment with her. And then 2005, when she came to settle in India, I realized that this was a turning point for me, because although she'd been traveling all the other years, she was still accessible in a very intimate way. And now at this point, I knew that she had bigger responsibilities in India, and so she would never be available in the same way again. And I had to step on a higher level in my own spiritual journey, so that there wasn't that dependency on her anymore.
Please help me to understand, when you're saying attachment to Daddy Janki, what exactly do you mean by that? How would you say it was reflected in your life, this kind of attachment?
What happened was, if ever there was a situation that was a challenging one, my first thought was to go to her, to tell her and seek guidance on how to resolve it. And of course, through the years, that's what had been happening, and I learned so much just continually. And I think it was the child still holding on to the old strings of the mother. And at that moment, I realized that now she had taught me so much, and I had to be detached, let go, and say, thank you, but now I can stand on my own feet and connect with God and take all the love and sustenance I need from the source directly.
From your perspective, what is the difference between feeling attached to, for instance, Daddy Janki, or simply loving her? Because love, at the end of the day, is all about. So how would you differentiate between love, which I think is something would you highly recommend, and detachment? How these two values are floating together?
Attachment is where the dependency begins to make you have sorrow, so that if that person isn't available, then you feel lonely, or you feel that there's a gap, something missing. And love is where you can have love for them, whether they're with you physically or you're far away, it's okay. There's no dependency there.
So from your perspective, when at the age of 104, with Daddy Janki, which I had also the opportunity to meet more than once, created the interview with her, when she left her body, were you sad? Were you crying?
There was emotion, there were tears, but I had said to her just a few days before she left, it was a moment when we were alone, other assistants, nurses, doctors, nobody else was around, and I said to her, Abby, if you want to go, it's okay, because the body's not supporting you anymore, and you've done so much for everyone. And so
What did she answer?
she didn't. She just gave me drishti. And so it was a very moving moment for me, and she was still sharing all of love through the drishti. And a few days later she flew away. And it's not that I gave her permission to go. It's the fact that the body was now so, if you have an old car and it's not functioning properly, it's time to say goodbye to that. And so yes, at that moment there was a little bit of sorrow, but I knew it was the right moment for her to know. And so I knew that everything would continue without any problem, even though she wasn't here in a physical form.
Are you finding yourself throughout the years, throughout meditations or other tools, reconnected to Daddy Junkie when you have challenges? No, it's very unique what is happening here, because throughout the conversation, the camera is talking with us, and it's never happened before. It's the first time, like some, I don't know, supreme souls are guiding, also with the technicalities. It's amazing. So I was asking Didi Gianti, throughout the challenges after Daddy Junkie went out of her body, if you are with any tool having inner connection with her?
Definitely. Sometimes when there are challenges that come, I remember a scene when I saw Daddy look at those challenges from her own situation, and I can remember how she dealt with them. And so that's a tremendous help and support. But also what I find is that whenever I'm giving a class or a lecture, so often there are examples of her life that come in front of me. And in a very natural way, I would refer to in such and such a place, this is what Daddy said, and this is what was happening. And so definitely that's suffering from this turnaround. But the teachings that she gave, those are really important.
She would emphasize one tool, first tool, that you think is, for you, was the most helpful one in your personal journey.
She had tremendous focus on patience. And normally you don't even think about patience as a virtue in today's world. People think, speed and movement, everything has to be on the ball. But for Daddy, patience was a very strong aspect to spirituality. And she would say that whenever there's a reaction, it's because there hasn't been a moment to reflect and patience to go inside and consider what would be the appropriate response rather than reaction. When there's reactions, then it can be something that's negative and it causes a problem further on. And so somebody says something and you instantly react, it's not healthy. But somebody says something and you have patience to not even count 10, but even count 2, or just say Om Shanti to yourself, and your response is a more balanced response.
But if what is happening in your example, for instance, is something that is more violent, something that is happening that is more intriguing, something that you feel that you have to respond on the fly. So how would you don't have to Om Shanti it, or you don't have the time to meditate or to count 10, or you think there's always time?
There's always a moment in which the mind can see, I can either do this or I can do that.
And then to choose.
And it just takes a moment. It's not even counting 10 or counting 2, 3. It's just that moment in which you either lash out with your tongue or you say, peace is what is important.
As a person that you represent peace, you represent Om Shantiness, you represent it in so many countries. In Brahma Kumari is also in Israel. It is celebrating 25 years with the leading here in Israel of Sharon, Stiverman. And this is a rough country. Let's say it, and so many violent acts that are happening even throughout your visit here. Did you had personally the opportunity, the chance, the challenge to stand in a violent scene and then to act? You was diligent in your life because you're all so wild for so many years. Did it happen to you?
I'll share an incident that happened early on in my life, and this would have been 1974. And I'd gone with the person who was actually the head of the organization at that time, and we'd gone to Haridwar, which is where there was the Kumbh Mela happening. And I'd never been to a Kumbh Mela or to this place, so I happened to be in Delhi with this lady. She said, come with me. And so we went along, and I spent a day there. Next day, I had to get back for some duties to Delhi. And we left at 4 o'clock in the morning. The head of the organization stayed. She had other commitments there. And I came back with a person who was in a hired car. And he was sitting in front, and there were 2 other sisters with me. One was a very senior lady, and another sister who was about the same age as myself. I was about 25 at that time. And it's about 6 o'clock in the morning, and so we were halfway through the journey, and it was a very silent village, one road, and just straight through the village, and from a distance, and I'm in the middle, and I'm seeing from a distance somebody who appears to be quite old, and it looked as if they were not deciding whether to cross the road or not. And the car wasn't traveling very fast, but they were coming on the road and stopping back a couple of times. And then suddenly there's an impact, and the car moves from the road to a rickshaw, one of those 3-wheeler scooters. It hits that, and it ricochets and hits a tree on the other side, and they stop. And in that space of time, the other lady, the senior, had hit her head against the bench that was in front. It was one of those old ambassadors that had a bench. But it was nothing too serious, so she was then being looked after. And I looked around for the driver, and I couldn't see him. And then I noticed that there was quite a noise in the village that had been completely silent. whether it was in news of the accident or vibrations, but now there was a big uproar, chaos. And I look here and I see a big gathering of men. And at that moment, I knew that the man driving was in the middle of that crowd. And from their noise and I didn't understand when we were speaking properly, but the noise was very aggressive, very violent. And I knew that they were going to start beating him up if they hadn't already. Something motivated me, and it wasn't a conscious decision, shall I not, it was just a powerful feeling. I went into the middle of the crowd, and it was unusual for a young woman dressed like this, and so the men parted and let me go to the door. And sure enough, they were just about to start beating him, because they were very angry. They were saying things like, the rich people come to the villages and kill our people. What do you think they're doing? Why are we doing this? So there was just emotion and negativity and anger. And at that moment, I just knew I stood in front of him and I put my arms out and I just bought time and I said, the police are coming. Now I didn't know whether the police were coming or not. But I just said, wait, the police are coming, the police are coming.
That's tone or shouting, wait.
I think, I don't remember if it was shouting or just speaking. I don't remember that. But they listened. And they stopped because I think they're just too shocked. It was such an unusual situation. It was unexpected for them. That the young woman would just stand like that. And so they didn't know whether to beat me, but they would have to beat me first to get to the man. And so they didn't know what to do. It was shock. And thankfully, the police did come within those few minutes in which they were still in shock and I was just at that moment telling them to wait. The police came, they took away the man. And later on, we found out that the man had been taken to hospital, but he had died. But if, of course, if they had beaten the driver, they would never have known that it actually wasn't his fault, because I witnessed that whole scene. The man had decided to step out just at the moment the car was just a few feet away. And so I think that, and my practice at that time, it was just 5 years of practice in time. But if you have just that feeling of wanting to serve, wanting to help people, then in this moment, as you say, violence or whatever, you're guided to do the right thing. Because the mind is connected, even though at that moment I don't even say I was remembering God. But there is a connection, a relationship. And so the signal came, this is what I must do.
What did you feel during those dramatic moments that you stepped in and you said, please stop? What did you feel?
It was just this motivating force that I had to stop this violence. There was no other thought. That you can't let this happen. You have to save this man's life.
If you could, from this remarkable moment, share another tool to the viewers that they can also be encouraged to prevent violence when we're all seeing that in Israel, Ukraine, Russia, the United States, India, all the world. So if you could share one more tool, a practical one.
Always, if I begin my day with meditation, connecting with my inner being and also the being up above, then at a moment of tension and stress, I I know that I will be guided. And so I would recommend to everyone who's watching or listening, begin your day with empowering yourself with peace and love and truth through connection with the Supreme, with the Divine. Not just a prayer which is something you've memorized and it's automatic, because sometimes we're praying but our mind is elsewhere, but a genuine relationship and connection with the Divine. This is called yoga, the connection, yoga, union, communion.
Well, in a few minutes, with your permission, we'll be delighted that here in a live show you will guide the viewers how they could do it at the morning, at the end of the day, some having any practical tool that you will guide them. But you know, we're living in all the world in a very, very stressful times. The iron time, violence, tanks in Europe, COVID-19, all the challenges with democracy. People are so shaped. Lack of money, and I think that sometimes people are losing faith, lack of hope. Can you please, as you are giving lectures also in the UN Council, etc., just to give any kind of practical hope when the golden era is going to be knocking on our doors?
I believe very sincerely that if there's a critical mass that we can reach of people who believe in peace and love and truth and are actually ready to start practicing those ideas in their lives, that critical mass can actually tip things over so that any era can begin. Because the critical mass will then impact the majority, and I think that will bring about the change. So we have to go knocking on the door of the golden age. We have to be ready to be able to bring in the golden age.
So you're thinking that it potentially can happen in our lifespan in the coming 5 years, 10 years. We have having a lot of patience. I've heard what you said with Daddy Yankee. 20 years, 30 years. When do you think it might reveal?
I don't have a date, but I do know that we're running out of time in terms of transformation for ourselves. If we think about what the climate change scientists are saying, 5 of the tipping points that are needed to move to a point where things become irreversible, there's 10 other points that we still kind of see as the markers, as the tipping points. But of course, the glacier melting has happened at a faster speed than anybody could have predicted, even with all the scenario planning with scientists and computers. So it's a short time that we have in which humanity has to say, stop, we can't have things carry on as they are. I have to change, and when I change, I can impact others around me, and they will impact more also. I'll share a story with you. At that time in 1968, not only was there this amazing experience which was like moving to another dimension, but also I had a chance to be with Mama Baba in several situations. And at one point, it was myself, 19, and Mama Baba, 92 at that time.
92.
And totally lucid, absolutely clear. Those lectures that he gave, we still have them and we study them. So what he said was, is it possible that every human being had to be healthy? I didn't know what to say. He said, yes, it's possible. Is it possible for everybody to have food available for them? Yes, it's possible. Is it possible for every individual to be happy? And then he said yes. And he said, all of that is possible, but only if, on a personal level, you deal with lust and anger and greed and ego and attachment. And you can't tell anybody to do that. You have to do it yourself. And then you can help others do the same. And then, yes, the world will have people who have health and wealth and happiness, and there's justice for all. And that was something that I held in my heart very deeply, that made me move further in my spiritual journey. In the year 2000, there was the Millennium Peace Summit organized at the UN, by the UN, and this was for the first time, because the UN is a political body, but at that time, for the first time, religious and spiritual leaders were brought together from across the world. You won't be surprised to know that only 2 women were given the platform, both of them from India. One of them was Lady Janaki. There were other women in the gathering, but they were part of the delegations. They weren't the lead of the delegations. And I was there with Daddy at that time. And the next day, that was a ceremonial opening, the first day. A beautiful scene of people chanting in different languages and gorgeous robes, lovely. But the next day was the business, and on the table was a panel of people who were the Under-Secretary Generals or the Assistant Secretary Generals. And they headed up things like International Labour, Population Fund, Environment Project, Children at Risk, Save the Children Fund, WHO, all of them were there. And each one of them said, we have more money, more resources in terms of human skills, we have more information, we have more technology, we have everything. But things today are worse than when the UN started. And that's because it seems that there's a lack of human will to bring about change. So the environment is worse, the population is sky high, but also they said, the WHO said, we've dealt with polio and smallpox, so that's good true, but it seems as if there's going to be a pandemic of mental ill health. They said this at that time.
Wow.
And everybody else said things are worse today than they were when we started. And then they said, this is why we've brought all of you together, because you're the people who can motivate people to have that will to make a change. And this is when they started talking about the Millennium Development Goals and then the Sustainable Development SDGs, etc., etc. And today we're very far away from fulfilling any of those goals. Why? Because the basic factor that got us very far, we have to get rid of lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego. People still feel that life is not possible without this. And the original state of the human soul is actually that state of being in which there is love, peace, purity, joy, and truth. We have the 5 negative forces, but equally we have these 5 beautiful qualities that are there, latent in every human being. But because we're not in touch with ourselves, we're not in touch with those qualities that are within the soul, and so things are going as they are. But I believe because of the mass story, today people believe in a holistic approach to health. People today are thinking about a holistic approach to education, to agriculture, to architecture, and so we're beginning to see that things like values are important. Things like having positive vision is important, which 20 years ago they didn't. And so there's all the negativity of the enemy speech that you mentioned earlier. All of that and all the list of problems are there, but there's also the ascending energy, which is the energy of holistic approach to life. There are more and more people turning to plant-based food and drink. There are more and more people feeling that yes, we need to do something about ourselves and go through some transformation. The maximum books that are sold today are about self-transformation.
This is part of the books that you already wrote, publishing, and teaching. Towards the last part of this very, very moving and touching conversation, I would very much ask you if you could lead a moment of helping people to gain this channeling towards what you call the divine, their inner self, the better than. If there is something practical that you could lead them so they can go and use these tools, as Brian Kumaris is teaching in more than 140 countries throughout the world for so many years. Please.
Best is to sit with both feet on the ground so that then you're balanced and your back straight so that the mind is alert. And I'll speak a few thoughts as I meditate and invite you all to follow these ideas. And you don't need to close your eyes. If you can't manage to keep them open, it's okay. Just looking straight ahead, not staring. Just keeping your gaze focused and fixed. I let the world outside stay out there, and I go on a journey. I visualize a point of light shining in the center of the forehead. I have focused my identity on the physical form and the world out there for a long time. Now, I focus my awareness on the inner being, the being of light. This is who I am. I am a being of light. I am a being of peace. I hold peace in my awareness. Things to feel natural. This awareness and peace, I begin to feel the presence of the divine, being of light, the source of all positive attributes. Like God the divine, the rays of love. And as I absorb them within myself, the power of love begins to heal the soul. I carry roots, some from a little while ago, some maybe years ago. I maybe also carry the trauma of my ancestors and the things they have been through.
Didi Gianti, throughout the challenges after Daddy Junkie went out of her body, if you are within any tool having inner connection with her?
Definitely. Sometimes when there are challenges that come, I remember a scene when I saw Daddy look at those challenges in her own situation, and I can remember how she dealt with them. And so that's a tremendous help and support. But also what I find is that whenever I'm giving a class or a lecture, so often there are examples of her life that come in front of me, and in a very natural way I would refer to, in such and such a place, this is what Daddy said and this is what was happening. And so definitely that subtle form is still around, but the teachings that she gave, those are with me all the time.
If you would emphasize one tool, the first tool that you think is for you was the most helpful one in your personal journey.
She had tremendous focus on patience.
Patience.
And normally you don't even think about patience as a virtue in today's world. People think, speed and movement, everything has to be on the ball. But for Daddy, patience was a very strong aspect of spirituality. And she would say that whenever there's a reaction, it's because there hasn't been a moment to reflect and the patience to go inside and consider what would be the appropriate response rather than a reaction. When there's reactions, then it can be something that's negative and it causes a problem further on. And so somebody says something and you instantly react, it's not healthy. But somebody says something and you have the patience to not even count 10, but even count 1, 2, or just say Om Shanti to yourself, then your response is a more balanced response.
But if what is happening in your example, for instance, is something that is more violent, something that is happening that is more intriguing, something that you feel that you have to respond on the fly. So how would you, and you don't have to Om Shanti it, or you don't have the time to meditate or to count to 10, or you think there's always time?
There's always a moment in which the mind can see, I can either do this or I can do that.
And then to choose.
And it just takes a moment. It's not even counting 10 or counting 2, 3, but just that moment in which you either lash out with your tongue or you say, peace is what is important.
As a person that you represent peace, and you represent Om Shantiness, and you represent it in so many countries, and Brahma Kumari is also in Israel, that is celebrating 25 years with the leading here in Israel of Sharona Stillerman. And this is a rough country, let's say it, and so many violent acts that are happening even throughout your visit here. Did you had personally the opportunity, the chance, the challenge to stand in a violent scene and then to act? You as Didi Gianti in your life, because you're all so white for so many years. Did it happen to you?
I'll share an incident that happened early on in my life, and this would have been 1974. And I'd gone with one of the person who was actually the head of the organization at that time, and we'd gone to Haridwar, which is where there was the Kumbh Mela happening. And I'd never been to a Kumbh Mela or to this place, so I happened to be in Delhi with this lady, and she said, come with me. And so we went along, and I spent a day there. Next day I had to get back for some duties to Delhi, and we left at 4 o'clock in the morning. The head of the organization stayed. She had other commitments there, And I came back with a person who was in a hired car, and he was sitting in the front, and there were two other sisters with me, one other very senior lady and another sister who was about the same age as myself. I was about 25 at that time, and it's about 6 o'clock in the morning, and so we were halfway through the journey, and it was a very silent village, one road, just straight through the village. And from a distance, and I'm in the middle in the back, and I'm seeing from a distance somebody who appears to be quite old, and it looked as if they were not deciding whether to cross the road or not. And the car wasn't traveling very fast, but they were coming on the road and stepping back a couple of times. And then suddenly there's an impact, and the car moves from the road to a rickshaw, one of those three-wheeler scooters. It hits that, and it ricochets and hits a tree on the other side, and we stop. And in that space of time, the other lady, the senior, had hit her head against the bench that was in the front car. It was one of those old ambassadors that had a bench. But it was nothing too serious, so she was then being looked after, and I looked around for the driver and I couldn't see him. And then I noticed that there was quite a noise in a village that had been completely silent, whether it was the noise of the accident or vibrations, but now there was a big uproar, chaos. And I look here and I see a big gathering of men, and at that moment I knew that the driver was in the middle of that crowd, and from their noise and I didn't understand Hindi or speak it properly, but the noise was very aggressive, very violent, and I knew that they're going to start beating him up if they haven't already. Something motivated me, and it wasn't a conscious decision, shall I not, it was just a powerful feeling. I went into the middle of the crowd, and it was unusual for a young woman dressed like this, and so the men parted and let me go to the middle. And sure enough, they were just about to start beating him because they were very angry. They were saying things like, you rich people come into the villages and kill our people. What do you think you're doing? Why are you doing this? So it was just emotion, negativity and anger. And at that moment, I just knew if I stood in front of him and I put my arms out and I just bought time, and I said, the police are coming. Now I didn't know whether the police were coming or not, but I just said, wait, the police are coming, the police are coming.
With that tone or shouting, wait?
I think, I don't remember if it was shouting or just speaking. I don't remember that. But they listened. And they stopped because I think they were just too shocked. It was such an unusual situation. It was unexpected for them that a young woman in white would just stand like that. And so they didn't know whether to beat me, but they would have to beat me first to get to the man. And so they didn't know what to do. It was shock. And thankfully, the police did come within those few minutes in which they were still in shock, and I was just at that moment telling them to wait. The police came, they took away the man, and later on we found out that the man had been taken to hospital, but he had died. But if they had beaten the driver, they would never have known that it actually wasn't his fault, because I witnessed that whole scene. The man had decided to step out just at the moment that the car was just a few feet away. And so I think that, and my practice at that time, it was just 5 years of practice, not a long time. But if you have just that feeling of wanting to serve, wanting to help people, then in a moment, as you say, in violence or whatever, you're guided to do the right thing because the mind is connected. Even though at that moment I won't even say I was remembering God, but there was a connection, a relationship, and so the signal came, this is what I must do.
And what did you feel during those dramatic moments that you stepped in and you said, please stop? What did you feel?
It was just this motivating force that I had to stop this violence. It was no other thought that you can't let this happen. You have to save this man's life.
If you could, from this remarkable moment, share another tool to the viewers that they can also be encouraged to prevent violence when we're all seeing that in Israel, Ukraine, Russia, to the United States, India, all the world. So if you could share one more tool, a practical one.
Always, if I begin my day with meditation, connecting with my inner being and also the being up above, then at a moment of tension and stress, I know that I will be guided. And so I would recommend to everyone who's watching and listening, begin your day with empowering yourself with peace and love and truth through connecting with the Supreme, with the Divine. Not just a prayer which is something you've memorized and it's automatic, because sometimes we are praying but our mind is elsewhere, but a genuine relationship and connection with the Divine. This is called yoga, the connection, yoga, union, communion.
Well, in a few minutes, with your permission, we'll be delighted that here in a live show you will guide the viewers how they could do it at the morning, at the end of the day, at some having any practical tool that you will guide them. But you know, we're living in all the world in a very, very stressful times. The iron time, violence, tanks in Europe, COVID-19, all the challenges with democracy. People are so shaken. Lack of money, and I think that sometimes people are losing faith, lack of hope. Can you please, as you are giving lectures also in the UN Council, etc., just to give any kind of practical hope when the golden era is going to be knocking in our doors?
I believe very sincerely that if there's a critical mass that we can reach of people who believe in peace and love and truth and are actually ready to start practicing those ideas in their lives, that critical mass can actually tip things over so that a new era can begin, because the critical mass will then impact the majority, and I think that will bring about the change. So we have to go knocking on the door of the golden age. We have to be ready to be able to bring in the golden age.
So you're thinking that it potentially can happen in our lifespan in the coming 5 years, 10 years? We are having lots of patience. I've heard what you said with Daddy Janki. 20 years, 30 years, when do you think it might reveal?
I don't have a date, but I do know that we're running out of time in terms of transformation for ourselves. If you think about what the climate change scientists are saying, 5 of the tipping points that are needed to move to a point where things become irreversible, there's 10 other points that we still can see as the markers, as the tipping points. But of course, the glacier melting has happened at a faster speed than anybody could have predicted, even with all the scenario planning with scientists and computers. So it's a short time that we have in which humanity has to say, stop, we can't let things carry on as they are. I have to change, and when I change, I can impact others around me, and they will impact more also. I'll share a story with you. At that time in 1968, not only was there this amazing experience which was like moving to another dimension, but also I had a chance to be with Brahma Baba in several situations. And at one point it was myself, 19, and Brahma Baba, 92 at that time.
92.
Yeah. And totally lucid, absolutely clear. Those lectures that he gave, we still have them and we study them. So what he said was, is it possible for every human being to be healthy? I don't know what to say. He said, yes, it's possible. Is it possible for everybody to have food available for them? Yes, it's possible. Is it possible for every individual to be happy? And again he said yes. And he said all of that is possible, but only if on a personal level we deal with lust and anger and greed and ego and attachment. And you can't tell anybody to do that. You have to do it yourself, and then you can help others do the same. And then, yes, the world can have people who have health and wealth and happiness, and there's justice for all. And that was something that I held in my heart very deeply, that made me move further in my spiritual journey. In the year 2000, there was the Millennium Peace Summit organized at the UN, by the UN, and this was for the first time, because the UN is a political body, but at that time, for the first time, religious and spiritual leaders were brought together from across the world. You won't be surprised to know that only 2 women were given the platform, both of them from India. One of them was Dadi Janki. There were other women in the gathering, but they were part of the delegations. They weren't the leader of the delegations. And I was there with Dadi at that time. And the next day, that was a ceremonial opening, the first day. A beautiful scene of people chanting in different languages and gorgeous robes, lovely. But the next day was the business, and on the table was a panel of people who were the Under Secretary Generals or the Assistant Secretary Generals, and they headed up things like international labour, population fund, environment project, children at risk, Save the Children Fund, WHO, all of them were there.
Wow.
And each one of them said, we have more money, more resources in terms of human skills, we have more information, we have more technology, we have everything. But things today are worse than when the UN started. And that's because it seems that there's a lack of human will to bring about change. So the environment is worse, the population is sky high, but also they said that WHO said we've dealt with polio and smallpox, so that's victory, but it seems as if there's going to be a pandemic of mental ill health.
Of mental.
They said this at that time.
Wow.
And everybody else said things are worse today than they were when we started. And then they said, this is why we've called all of you together, because you're the people who can motivate people to have that will to make a change. And this is when they started talking about the Millennium Development Goals and then the Sustainable SDGs, etc., etc. And today we're very far away from fulfilling any of those goals. Why? Because the basic factor that Baba spoke about, you have to get rid of lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego. People still feel that life is not possible without these. And the original state of the human soul is actually that state of being in which there is love, peace, purity, joy, and truth. You have the 5 negative forces, but equally you have these 5 beautiful qualities that are there latent in every human being. But because we're not in touch with ourselves, we're not in touch with those qualities that are within the soul, and so things are going as they are. But I believe the critical mass story, that as today people believe in a holistic approach to health. People today are thinking about a holistic approach to education, to agriculture, to architecture, and so they're beginning to see that things like values are important. Things like having a positive vision is important, which 20 years ago they didn't. And so there's all the negativity of the Iron Age that you mentioned earlier. All of that and all the list of problems are there, but there's also the ascending energy, which is the energy of holistic approach to life. There are more and more people turning to plant-based food and drink. There are more and more people feeling that, yes, we need to do something about ourselves and go through some transformation. The maximum books that are sold today are about self-transformation.
And this is part of the books that you already wrote, and publishing and teaching. Towards the last part of this very, very moving and touching conversation, I would very much ask you if you could lead a moment of helping people to gain this channeling towards what you call the divine, their inner self, the better them. If there is something practical that you could lead them so they can go and use these tools, as Brian Komaris is teaching in more than 140 countries throughout the world for so many years. Please.
The best is to sit with both feet on the ground so that then you're balanced and your back straight so that the mind is alert. And I'll speak a few thoughts as I meditate and invite you all to follow these ideas. And you don't need to close your eyes, but if you can't manage to keep them open, it's okay. Just looking straight ahead, not staring, but just keeping your gaze focused and fixed. I let the world outside stay out there, and I go on an inner journey. I visualize a point of light shining in the center of the forehead. I have focused my identity on the physical form and the world out there for a long time, but now I focus my awareness on the inner being, the being of light. This is who I am. I am a being of light. I am a being of peace. I hold peace in my awareness. It begins to feel natural and very comfortable. And in this awareness of peace, I begin to feel the presence of the divine, the being of light, the source of all positive attributes. And from the divine come rays of love. And as I absorb them within myself, the power of love begins to heal the soul. I carry wounds, some from a little while ago, some maybe years ago. I maybe also carry the trauma of my ancestors and the things they have been through, and the healing power of divine love begins to do its work. The divine love of the Supreme soothes the soul and allows my heart to open. And as I absorb this pure love, I can forgive. I can forgive myself for the mistakes I have made. I can seek forgiveness from the divine for whatever it is I did. But now, with a big heart, generous heart, an open heart, I can also forgive others. I let go and find freedom. And the heart sings with joy as I feel free. The process of absorbing love has started, and it will continue. Divine love reaches out to the global family. And I remember I am connected with this huge family through an eternal bond of love. And divine love ignites hope in human hearts. Divine love reaches all forms of life, and they too feel protected and safe. This pure love reaches all the elements of nature. And nature is restored to harmony. God's love surrounds the universe, and we move into a better world. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Yes, it was very, very profound. Thank you for that. One personal dream that you, sister, Didi Auntie, would like to accomplish in your personal life in the coming decades? Something that you wish for yourself personally?
To be able to feel that, yes, I have fulfilled God's hopes in me.
Seeking for perfection, don't you feel that you already accomplished that today?
It's a journey, and both things go together. The movement towards perfection, but also the responsibility given to be able to serve.
And how would you visualize a sign that you got into and accomplished this dream? How would you know?
I would feel that state in which there's a sense of fulfillment, being complete inside.
We're aiming towards the end of this conversation, this interview. I'm curious, how was your experience here? Because you were so personal and moving, and when you were talking about the last conversation you had with the Daddy Junkie, it's like we were all, with your kind help, there with you, seeing you both talking. So I'm wondering, how did you feel?
You've been able to ask very moving questions that opened up feelings.
Thank you for your kind words, for your compliment, for finding the time during this hectic visit here in Israel, celebrating 25 years for Brahma Kumaris here in Israel with the local leadership of Sharona Stillerman. And I want to thank you, sister.
Thank you. It's
Didi
been
Auntie.
a privilege and an honor to be with you.
Thank you. It's I had the opportunity to meet you for several of years and to see you in lectures and interviews here in India, in Mount Abu, in the UK, and I want to thank you so much for these kind words and for your warm heart and all the tools and practical stories and very moving one that you shared. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you. You've been very kind and very generous with your time. Thank you for giving me this invitation.
Thank you very much, and we would love to thank you for being with us, for using all the stories and the practical tools in your daily life, and thank you for being with us at Content to Now TV.